Okay,
so thank you to Paul, and let me just share my screen for a second. Oh. I found the right place to do it, it would help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Can't find share my screen. It's usually just there somewhere.
normally on the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Little green button.
Oh God, I'm looking straight at it. Honestly, it's pathetic. Can you see the Qualsy logo?
Not yet.
Okay.
The what? Recording.
It's all right, Lynn. You let people. I'll let people in if you sort your screen out.
Yeah, if you could do, that'd be great. Thank you. Right. Anyway, thank you very much. Good evening. And first of all, thanks to Qualsy for sponsoring us. Qualsy's AI integrated self-guided platform facilitates consumer engagement across various activities, perfect for independent researchers conducting remote qualitative studies with enhanced intimacy and scalability. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Say thank you very much to Paul for this incredibly popular, now up to 39 attendees event. And over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, fellow ICGers, for coming along and giving me some of your valuable time on a Thursday afternoon. What I'm going to do today is just talk about three really, I hope, simple and straightforward things. And I've just been saying to Lynn, some of you know me, I'm not a clever man. So anything I'm going to talk about is eminently sensible, eminently practical, and eminently simple, because it's all I can really manage. So if I can manage this stuff, hopefully you can too. But just take you through three things that will help you essentially to start the new business development process. So this all arose out of an ICG email exchange about how do we get into conversation with new people. And hopefully what I'm going to do today is give you some ideas and some inspiration for how you might do that based on some of my own experience, personal experience of running my own business for the last 11 years, but actually what I kind of specialize in, which is helping market research and insight agencies with their growth. So sales and marketing and strategy. And as part of that, we talk a lot about, understandably, business development.
Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could everybody mute themselves, please?
I was going to say, we've got a bit of a background noise. If someone could mute,
everyone could mute themselves. And if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. We'll have them at the end. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm just going to share my I'm going to share my screen with you. Here we go.
Sorry, I'm not mute. I can't quite spot it. Can someone tell me where it is?
It'll be on the bottom, I think, Mike, along the bottom of the screen.
I've done it.
Ah, brilliant. So yes, so three things you can do today to start sourcing new project briefs from your network, and that's essentially new biz development. Just to very briefly, who am I? Just as a bit of a credibility setting and context setting, I've been in the market research industry for over 20 years. For the last 11 running client advocates. As I said, I help agencies grow. I'm an ex-commercial director, so I used to be commercial director of bits of what was in its day TNS, but also worked at places like Simpson Carpenter. And over the last 11 years, I've helped market research agencies with their growth. I try to be practical, action focused, and hopefully this will give you some motivation and inspiration and some ideas about how you can grow your agency or your micro business. So the three things, I'm going to jump straight in. And as Lynn says, ask questions. Very happy to kind of take questions and chit chat about stuff. But the first way that I see that's really effective about growing your network is the use of conferences. And I don't know how many of you attend conferences or events. They don't need to necessarily be in person these days, obviously. But I've found my experience, and I know my clients' experience, is conferences and attendance at conferences, and specifically networking at conferences, is a really useful and powerful way of meeting and starting conversations with new people. And unsurprisingly, there's kind of a process you can follow to work through a conference and make sure it gives you really good return on investment. And some of that is about planning beforehand. So I would always say to anybody going to a conference, plan beforehand who you want to try and meet and who you want to try and network with. Quite often it's if you do a bit of sort of sneaky beaky research, you can actually very quickly identify who's going to be at the conferences. And if they're people that you think you want to sell to, or people you want to engage with or start to build a conversation with, then there's lots of publicly listed available information about conference. So for instance, Quirks London. I don't know how many of you are going to go to Quirks London, which is in about a month's time, I think. I'll be there. So if anyone's there, please do come up and say hello to me. If you happen to see me across the room, or indeed avoid me if this talk is of no use to you whatsoever. I won't be insulted at all. But what I will do for Quirks is I will sit there and go, right, who do I know who's going to Quirks that I want to talk to? And that might be businesses that I think, you know what, I've been in conversation with you in the past, but I've never quite managed to get it across the line, and I've not spoken to you for a while, so I'll make sure I go and see your stands. I'll look at the speakers. If I think there's an interesting speaker or somebody that I think, well, you know what, I think I can help them out, I will check that out. And what I'm doing beforehand is I'm therefore clarifying in my own head what success looks like from a conference. And for me, that's about the networking and getting those conversations. So do your planning beforehand, and I think that will, and have your targets and people that you want to try and meet. The second thing is, while you're at the conference, is to make the most of it. So mix and mingle. When I was at Quirks last year, I think I walked 9 miles in a day. And that was because I was just wandering around and around and around the hall. So wear comfortable shoes. But what I was making sure was, and if I spotted someone, I thought, oh, you know what, I want to go and talk to them. I think I know them, or oh, that's somebody that that I might think is interesting. And they were talking to someone else, then I'd wander around and I'd go and see someone else, and then I would wait for them out the corner of their eye to become available, and I would wander over and introduce myself. Now, I appreciate I'm probably slightly unusual in that regard, because I don't seem to have the embarrassment gene that some people have that makes that difficult to do. But there are things that, even if you are not naturally extroverted, there are things that you can do around conference networking to help you kind of get over some of those difficulties. The first thing, of course, is hang out by the coffee stand. So hanging out by the coffee stand, we're all hanging out by the coffee stand essentially because we're all a bit nervous and all a bit awkward about hanging out at a conference. So go and stand by the coffee stand, and then make somebody's day. So there will be someone hanging out by the coffee stand who is on their own. And they're on their own because they're sitting there with the same thoughts in their head that you've got, which is, oh God, why have I signed up to this? This is so embarrassing. I don't know anybody. I don't know quite how to manage this. What am I going to do? I promise you, if you walk up to that person and say, hi, I'm Paul. What brings you to the conference today? Which is always quite a nice little opener. They will think you're amazing because you've just dug them out of a socially embarrassing situation. And it's a great starting point for having a conversation. So mix and mingle. If you can go to the social events that some of the conferences and some of the events and some of the activities around that. Quite often you'll bump into someone at a conference, you have a quick chit chat, but then they're having a beer in the evening or a glass of wine in the evening. That's actually a really good place to reconnect and to talk to people again and to continue a conversation in a more relaxed, slightly more natural environment. So I think going to the networking events is a good thing to do. And while you are at the conference, when you're talking to somebody, the really important thing is, and I'm old-fashioned, I carry a notebook around. Write notes on every single person you talk to. So, and what I do is I sit there and, I'll ask them, spend for 15 minutes chatting to someone, and then I will take myself off and I will write up very quickly some notes on that. Who it was I spoke to, what business they work for, what we talked about, any interesting personal facts or information you might have elicited, because that's really, really important. It's that writing of the notes that then will do you can do the follow-up. And I'll come on to that in a second, but just as by way of example of how writing notes is quite a useful thing. I was at the Research Club drinks after the MRS conference last year. And I'd just spoken to someone at the MRS drinks, someone I thought, well, you know what, I think they might be a customer or a potential client of mine. And I wanted to take myself off. So I went into the gents' toilets. Don't worry, there is a point to this story. And I was writing notes. And somebody walked in and went, what are you doing? And I went, well, I've just met someone I'm really interested in potentially doing some business with. So I'm writing some notes. And they said, this individual, it was a chap said, what do you do? And I said, well, I help market research agencies with their growth. And one of the things that I try and do for myself is I try and build my business through attending these sorts of events and writing notes and then following up. And he said, you know what? That's really interesting. I own a market research agency. I'm looking for some way of getting some more growth into my business. You obviously practice what you preach. We should have a conversation. A year later, he is now a client. So you never know how writing your notes might help you. But the actual way that writing the notes will help is actually the final bit of a conference, which is the follow-up. And I promise you, the value in conferences is in the follow-up. It's, you've got to be there to obviously attend and write the notes and make the meetings and make the networking, but it's the follow-up. So if you do go to a conference or an event, block out the next day of your diary or the next half a day in your diary. This is what I do. It's what I advise all my clients to do, and spend that half a day following up on every single person that you have met. And you can do that on an email. You can do that on LinkedIn. So as a matter of course, send them a LinkedIn connection if you've met them at the conference. With a little note saying, dear such and such, so nice to meet you at the conference yesterday. Would be lovely to connect. Love, Paul. So send that connection invite. But then also, if you've managed to get an email from them, and it's fine to exchange emails, it's fine to ask for people for emails if you think you want to have a conversation with them, send them a follow-up email on, and basically say, dear such and such, so nice to meet you at the conference yesterday. I thought our conversation that we had while we were in the lunch queue around synthetic data, and using the usage of it in the pharmaceutical industry was absolutely fascinating. You mentioned about your dog's paw being injured, and you had to go off into the vet. So I hope your dog's all right. It would be lovely to have a follow-up conversation or meeting to talk about that synthetic data thing again. Would you like to put a date in the diary? Now, if you do that, I can guarantee you a good third of the people that you send that email to will respond in a positive way and will go, oh, yes, you know what? I really did enjoy meeting you, Paul, and thank you so much for following up. And the fact you've done it within 24 hours of the meeting, of me meeting me, suggests you're organized and you were interested and motivated in what I had to say. And, you're a friendly, interesting individual. Why don't I have a meeting with you? So a lot of the value on conferences and networking is about the follow-up and doing that in a really rigorous, really organized way. And one of the things I would say about all these 3 tips that I've got today, I'm not a great natural salesperson, and most of the people I work with in the industry are not naturally great salespeople. But if you are organized, and if you are consistent, and if you are resilient, you are going to go a long way to becoming better at sales. Because if you can organize yourself and and carve out the time to do these things, and you have a process, and you follow that process, and you are not unperturbed by the fact that people perhaps ignore you some of the time, then you will carry on and you will be successful in terms of building out new networks and new connections. I promise you. Because if I can do it and my clients can do it, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. So that's the first tip: network at conferences. The second one, actually, what have we got? Let's have a look at questions. Have we got questions? Which events would I recommend apart from Quirks? Thank you, Sally. I think it depends on who you're trying to sell to. So I've got a client of mine who specializes in kids research. They make sure they go to conferences where there are lots of kids brands. If you are working with sample companies, go to SampleCon. If you are in qualitative research, then maybe go to one of the qualitative conferences, ASQ or the like. Even go to the ICG. I say this quietly, but I have even personally got clients in the ICG from being at ICG events. So I think it really does depend on who your target market is and where they're hanging out. But I think Quirks is the best one in the UK. MRS is quite good. If you're selling to other agencies, then Aura is probably not a sensible thing. But if you're selling to end clients, if you can get into Aura or an Aura event, that's going to be a really powerful and useful place to sell and to network. But I think it depends on who you're trying to sell to. So question for you is, which conference networks can I attend most easily? I'm in Durham, London, expensive and tiring. Quite. Conferencing is tiring. One of the things I always say is, if I've had a good conference, then I've got foot ache and I need to go and lie in a darkened room for about 24 hours after I've done my follow-up because I'm knackered from it. It's really, really hard work. Yes, it's always tiring. In terms of conferences in the north, honestly, I'm afraid I don't know. That's not because there aren't any, it's because I genuinely don't know. It might be worth seeing if there are any. So there are a number of agencies in the north of England. So I call them the Northern Powerhouse. So the Trinity McQueens, the Blue Yonders, the Beyond Blues, the guys. Oh, who else? Not other than Trinity McQueen. Box Clever, DJS. There are a number of research agencies that operate in the north of England. And I know they do events and conferences and bits and pieces. If you've got any people in those businesses that you know, or you can reach out to and go, which conferences do you attend in the north of England? I would check that, try and do that. It might be worth contacting the MRS and finding out if they're doing any events in the north of England. That I can't give any more than that, I'm afraid, but hopefully that's reasonably useful. I mean, one of the things about expensive, you mentioned about London being expensive. Conferences are expensive, but you've got to think about this as an investment. It's not a cost. So I'm going to Quirks. That's going to cost me £1,000 or something for the 2 days, which sounds like an awful lot of money. But based on the number of leads it generates for me, and based on the amount of work that will potentially generate, if I pick up 2 new clients at Quirks, and that generates, over the course of 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 pieces of work, then I can promise you, based on my day rate, that is a really, really lucrative and very, very well returned investment. So I would urge you to think about some of this stuff as investment rather than a cost. And if you're not budgeting for it, put something in your business budget to do some of this stuff so that you've got something that you're planned for. Isabel said it's very important to qualify the leads. They must be decision makers for your service. Absolutely, completely, 100%. And I think if it's part of the skill of this is when you do meet somebody and you're chatting to them, very quickly determining whether you think they are a qualified lead. So having some clarity in your own head about who your ideal target market is really important, and it's part of the prep that you want to probably do before you go to the conference. But I couldn't agree more. Our conference is good for our conference is so good for you because you're focused on agents and potential clients. My view is that clients are more guarded because yes, that is true. So I make sure I try and hang out at conferences where there are end clients. So, for instance, I attend Ephemera, which is the pharmaceutical research agency and end client conference. I'm doing that in June. Last year, I picked up 2 end clients from Ephemera. So that's not agencies, that's actual pharmaceutical businesses. So again, it comes back to making sure that you're at the conferences that where your ideal target market is hanging out. Are business cards still a thing? Do you recommend connecting on using LinkedIn? Camille, great idea. I use business cards and I use LinkedIn. The problem with a business card is it's passive. So you can give someone a business card and they don't do anything. They can stick it in their back pocket or stick it in their wallet and forget about you. LinkedIn is a far more proactive means of connecting, I would always favor using LinkedIn, but I take business cards as well and throw those around, if only because I've got 500 of them that I had printed 5 years ago that I'm still got in a cupboard. So it's it's kind of spring cleaning. Right, I'm going to crack on because we need to take point number 2, but keep your questions coming. Referrals and recommendations. So one of the things that I would observe from most of the time I've been in business is it's remarkable how many people do amazing work for clients that clients love, and yet they don't lever that and they don't take advantage of it. And so asking for referrals and recommendations from your existing clients to say, can you introduce me to somebody new or somebody interesting, is a really powerful and a really good way of finding new clients and finding new business. And again, it's something that I do quite extensively, and I would always advise my clients to do. Now, there is a way of doing this so that it doesn't feel so completely ick, because ringing someone up or asking somebody in a meeting that's a client to say, oh, I think you like me, but can you recommend me to somebody else, feels like, and you feel it going, and they probably go, oh no, don't ask me, don't ask me, don't ask me. Although actually they probably don't, but that's in our heads. But anyway, but there's a script you can use that I use. I borrowed this, so I've learned this. This is not my script. This is this came from a chap called Andy Bounds, Bounds, Andy Bounds. Andy Bounds is a sales guru. He's on LinkedIn. He's brilliant. He's bald as a coot. Not there's anything wrong about being bald as a coot. And he's very funny. He's very no nonsense. He's quite northern. Again, nothing a problem with that. And he's a really good person to check out on LinkedIn. He does loads of videos, loads of engaging content. And I used the script that he used. He taught me to use from one of his videos. So, and the script goes like this. If you ask somebody to refer you to somebody, you're putting all the onus on them, because you're asking them to do the hard work, because you're saying, oh, I think I'm quite good. You think I'm quite good. Is there anyone you could recommend me to? That you're making them do the hard work, and it's kind of not specific, and it's not easy for them to answer that. So the script you use is you're very specific. And what you do is you do a bit of research. And hopefully we're all researchers, so this should come naturally to you. You identify some people that they know that you want to know. So I might look at Linda, and Linda, I'm picking on you simply because your name's I can see your face. Linda, I would say I'd check out Linda's LinkedIn profile, and I check out who she works with, and I do a bit of sort of bit of research, and I identify that Linda works with someone at Unilever. I don't know if you do, Linda, but say there was someone at Unilever, and I thought, you know what, I really want to work with that person at Unilever. What I would do is I'd ring Linda up and go, Linda, you know how we work together and you think I'm brilliant? And Linda would nod and go, yes, you are brilliant, Paul, but you're also egotistical, but we'll pass over that. I'd go, Linda, I've got a problem that I would really like your advice and help over. And Linda, because Linda's a nice person and we've worked together and done some work, she thinks I'm okay, would go, all right, what's the problem, Paul? And I go, such and such at Unilever, I really want to work with them, but I don't know the best way to approach them. Can you give me some advice about the best way to approach them? Now, what you do by having that conversation, one, it's very specific. Linda doesn't have to be creative and think about the people that she thinks I might be able to help. We're being very focused and specific. And what Linda will do, if I ask that question, is Linda will do one of three things. Linda will either go, actually, you know what, Paul, I do know such and such, but I don't know them very well. I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, but I can't really help you. And you go, that's fine. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Or Linda will go, oh, yeah, such and such. Yeah, no, he's really, really nice. Tell you what, I've got an email for him. Why don't I give you his email address and you can email him? And I say to Linda, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. When I email him, would it be okay if I mention that you gave me his email address because you thought I might be a good person to speak to? And Linda can go, yes, in which case, fantastic. Or no, I'd rather you didn't, but never mind, you've still got the email address. The third response that Linda can give, and this is the best one, Linda goes, actually, you know what? I do know such and such. He's fantastic. I think you'd really get on with him. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send him an email and I'll copy you in and I'll make the introduction for you. Now, all of those are perfectly valid approaches and ways of getting referrals. And all of those are outcomes that you will get by asking that question, not who can you refer me to, but would you refer me to a specific individual, and using that kind of script. And I promise you, because I've done it, Andy Bounds gave me really good advice on this. It actually genuinely works really, really effectively. It's just a good way of operating. So that's the second thing, use referrals and recommendations. Now, let me have a look at some
Can I interrupt slightly? So
yes,
really quickly,
Lily.
I would only do 1 or 3 because I would never give you someone else's email address because the GDPR pedant in me wouldn't let me do it. Really sorry.
Brilliant. Linda, you're a woman of principle and I admire that.
But I would absolutely do number 3 and CC you
Yeah.
and introduce you if I
Yes.
knew them well enough, but I wouldn't even feel comfortable with number 2 because if I don't know them that well, then I would just go with 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
fair enough. And look,
Sorry.
and the wonderful, slightly weird world we work in, we worry about these things. Most people don't. So, yeah. But thank you for that. That's a really good build. That's a really good build. Right. What else have we got? Specific referral with script. This is genius. Oh, thank you, Graham. It's not my genius, it's Andy Bounds. I don't take responsibility for this, and that's genius on his part, but I do know it works, and I do advise all my clients to do this stuff, and I do it myself. So that's the second one. Right, the third one. Now, I'm going to take a breath here because this I know is a bit of a leap for some of you, and it was a leap for me when I first did this. So, LinkedIn. putting aside all of your natural reservations and concerns about LinkedIn, hand on heart, I can tell you LinkedIn is the best, most effective business development, lead generation, connection tool there is available for anybody like us, because it's free and it gives you pretty much unlimited access to all the sorts of people that you want to talk to. So, but you have to be comfortable and confident using LinkedIn, and if you're not, that's probably another knowledge share, because I could do 45 minutes on LinkedIn alone. But I'm gonna go with this because I think it's a really important and really vibrant and successful way of building new connections. So, as we've already alluded to, you need to first of all target your focus. So it is no good just peppering loads and loads of people on LinkedIn. You need to be really specific and clear about the people you want to talk to. So for instance, I ran a campaign for my business back in October. I wanted to talk to and build connections and start to sell to small to medium-sized agencies in the US, on the east coast of the US. So New York, Chicago, down all the way down to to Florida. And what I did was I went on LinkedIn and I found those people, those businesses, and those individuals. So I specifically target the owners of agencies, because that's my target market. And as the commentary and some of the questions make, you've got to be really clear about who your target market is. But if you're, if you're a working for an end brand, it might be the head of insight or the research director. If you're trying to sell to agencies, it might be the head of operations. If you're in recruitment like Liz, it might be somebody that's likely to buy recruitment for Qual. So you target that market, and so what you do is you come up with a short but succinct link of a list of people who are absolutely your target market. And what you then do is you send them a connection request on LinkedIn. And you do that in such a way that they are minded to answer you. Now, the way to do that is not just press connect, it's to send them a personalized invite. So, dear, you've got 200, 300 characters. Dear such and such, I'm looking to connect with people like insight experts on the West Coast or East Coast of the US. I help agencies with their growth, share content. Would you be willing to connect? So you send that out to the people that you've identified. Now, there is a certain amount of numbers in this. There's a numbers game in this, but that connection invite that I sent through in October, I sent it to about 100, I think I did 120 people in the end over the course of several weeks. So every day or so, I sat down and I sent another few invites out. Now, of 120 people that I sent that to, I think about 25 or 30 eventually accepted my connection invite. Now, when they accept my connection invite, that does some really important things. First of all, it gets them to look at my profile, and my profile hopefully shows that I'm kind of relevant and I can add value to them. And it makes them go, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of this chap, Paul, but now I have, and I can see he does some of the things and who he helps, and I might be someone he might help. It also means that for the first couple of weeks after I connect with them, they see any LinkedIn content that I put up. So if you post on LinkedIn, if you put material on LinkedIn, if you comment on LinkedIn, then they will see that in their feed, and it will start to build up a sense of, oh, I know this person. I start to see what their relevance is, and I start to understand how they might be interesting and helpful to my business. Now, if they accept your connection invite, send them a thank you note as a matter of courtesy. Just go, dear such and such, thank you so much for accepting my connection invite. I look forward to sharing content and materials. Have a super day. So there's no selling, there's none of this horrible immediate, oh, you've connected with me, 3 seconds later I send you a brochure and say to them, oh, you know what, can we have a phone call so I can talk to you about how I can help your business? There's none of that nonsense, because that is honestly awful. That is a terrible way to sell. It's a terrible way to engage with people. And anybody who does it, honestly, is a bit of a bloody idiot, in my opinion. Apologies to anybody that does do it on this call. I don't suppose any of you really do. That's not the ICG way, I would imagine. But send them a nice thank you note. Then what you need to do is about 10 days or 2 weeks afterwards, send them a little note, and send them a little note with something that is going to be valuable to them. So it's a bit of information or a bit of thoughts, some thoughts you've got around their particular industry or their particular market sector, or about something that's interesting in the world of market research that's going on that you think is relevant or interesting to them. But don't sell anything. Just say, dear such and such, thank you so much for connecting a couple of weeks ago. At the time, I said I'd share content with you when I thought it was relevant. Here's a bit of relevant content and interesting stuff that I think you might find helpful. I thought it was interesting. Send that across. About 10 days, 2 weeks after that, you do that again with a second piece of content or a second bit of information. And then about 2 or 3 weeks after that, you do it again. So by this time, they've been connected to you for 6-8 weeks. If you are active on LinkedIn, they're seeing some of your content and some of the material and some of the things you're doing on LinkedIn. They're also receiving these lovely messages from you where you're not selling to them, or you're not telling them they should buy from you. You're showing that you're knowledgeable and that you understand their particular issues and that you've got an opinion and that you're a decent person that they might want to engage with. And then only when you've done those 3 or 4 messages do you then send them a message that says, dear so-and-so, I hope all this content and stuff's been useful. If you remember, this is how I help you. Would you like to have a Zoom call or a meeting to talk about how I can possibly help your business? Now, if you take people through that process, so in my example, 120 people I sent that invite to on the East Coast of the US. I got about 25, 30 connections accepted. I took them through that process. I post quite regularly on LinkedIn, so they've seen my content there. I've hopefully showed some value and demonstrated my sense of how I can help them. When I asked them for a meeting, I got 3 meetings. So from 120 down to 3 seems like a terrible ratio. I can promise you, from a business development lead gen perspective, that is leading class. That is, if you do just an email campaign, you may get 1 in 1,000 meetings. So to get 3 out of 120 is absolutely spot on. And of those 3, actually 2 of them have converted into being clients. So in my example, that was a very, very efficient and effective way of generating new business and generating new conversations. And look, even if they say no, or even if they ignore you, the fact is they're now connected to you, and they will continue to see your content, and they will continue to see your materials. And so, at some point in the future, they may well still become a client again. I had an example with one of my clients who went through this process. 14 months after they'd originally connected to somebody through this process, where the person said, I don't want a meeting now, but thanks for sending the content through. They'd continue to kind of send content on a regular basis. They'd continue to engage. 14 months afterwards, that client converted into a piece of business that now represents about £250,000 worth of revenue to them on an annual basis. So it is about being consistent and resilient. It's also about managing expectations, because you need to accept that at any one time, about 95% of the market you want to sell to isn't in a position to buy because they've already got a supplier, or they don't have the need, or they don't have any budget at the moment, or something else is going on in their business that means they're not in a position to buy. But by engaging with them on an ongoing basis using LinkedIn, you can get to the point where, at the point where they do have some money or they do want to buy, you are one of the people they potentially come to. So that very briefly is how you can do a connection campaign on LinkedIn. I've brushed over a lot of the detail on that. Again, if people want to pick my brains about that afterwards, I'm very happy to have my brains picked. I'm mindful of time because I think we're meant to be up now. I've just got a call to action, which is, I always try and finish a presentation with a call to action because otherwise, what's the point? So my call to action to you, to everybody watching this, I'm very happy to stay on afterwards and chat and continue to take questions if people want to. But if people want to leave, I understand that. But plan to do something of, whether it's go to a conference and network, or it's ask for some referrals and recommendations, or it's use LinkedIn a bit more constructively. Do something, because if you are expecting a different outcome from doing everything exactly the same as you've done before, you're bonkers. It's not going to work. You have to do something differently. Always be doing something. Don't leave great big gaps between the processes that you've put in place to engage and try and build connections, because it takes time, and so you need to kind of have it always ticking over. Be positive. I'm an optimist, and I think to be in sales and business development, you have to be an optimist. But actually, to run your own micro businesses and to do what we do in the ICG, I think you've got to be an optimist. So be positive about this and believe in the value you generate. It's really so much easier to build connections and to demonstrate and your value that you can bring if you actually believe it yourself. So you are all seasoned, experienced, brilliant researchers and technicians and individuals that have got deep-seated, long-term experience in market research and insight. You will generate value for your clients and your customers, and you'll have been doing that for a long time. But you need to believe in that, so that when you are engaging with people through a network at a conference, or through a referral, or through LinkedIn, that actually you genuinely believe that you can help them. Because if you don't believe it, they certainly won't. That is my call to action to you, ladies and gentlemen. We've run over. If you ever want to pick my brains, just finally, there's some stuff, connection, invites, whatever. I'm very happy to connect on LinkedIn with my email, my phone. I'm available on WhatsApp. All forms of communication are very welcome. All channels of communication are very welcome. And I'm very happy to hang around now and take more questions, or people to pick my brains, or indeed to call me an idiot. I'm very happy.
Oh, that was really good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to stay on if any of you are. There's a few comments in the chat you might want to look at.
Yes.
The main one is that you've already committed now to a knowledge share session on LinkedIn. So I'm going to have to hold you to it, I'm afraid.
Very happy to do that. LinkedIn. I'm a sad LinkedIn geek. I love it. It is brilliant. It is, honestly, it's the best tool that for my business that I've ever used. I've generated literally hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of work over the last 11 years on my business using LinkedIn as a tool. It is amazing. I don't understand why people don't get it. Sorry, rant over.
Do you want to have are there any comments in the chat you want to respond to? If
yes. What is your benchmark for posting quite frequently on LinkedIn? So I post 3 or 4 times a week. But as I said, I'm a bit of a junkie. I think a couple of times a week probably makes sense if you want to start to really use LinkedIn as a tool. But understanding that some of you may not post on LinkedIn at all, the first thing to do is not actually post. The first thing to do is to comment on other people's material. So there is lots of evidence that nobody knows how the algorithm works, because LinkedIn don't tell you, but I spend a lot of time gaming on it in terms of gaming the algorithm. And I know people who spend a lot of time doing it as well. If you comment on other people's material, and by comment, more than 15 words, constitutes a good comment, that will in itself boost your profile on LinkedIn. Other people will see that comment. Other people will look at your profile. If you're posting on LinkedIn as well, that will also boost your your posts on LinkedIn. So as a starting point, as your entry level drug for LinkedIn, just start commenting on other people's stuff, other people's material, I would suggest, and then build over time to posting more regularly. When we come to, if I'm going to do a knowledge share on LinkedIn, I can talk to you about kind of how you generate, 2 or 3 pieces of content a week. It's not nearly as difficult as you might think. But yeah, 2 or 3 times.
I asked whether LinkedIn Pro was useful.
So I
necessary.
use I've got the premium version of LinkedIn, which I find very useful because it gives me all my analytics, so I can see who's looked at my profile. I can track the performance of my posts. I can track the performance of my newsletter that I do on LinkedIn. So it's very useful from that. I also have, in addition to that, I have a subscription to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is expensive, and I wouldn't advise it for everybody, but LinkedIn Sales Navigator gives you access to every single person on LinkedIn with a very powerful search tool. So I can very quickly identify heads of insight in FMCG businesses that turn over X amount of revenue based in this, state in the US. But it's a very powerful tool, but it's expensive as a result. But if you want to play around with it, you can quite often get a free subscription for a month or something as a bit of a kind of a taster, and that's sometimes quite good. So Alan said, so you got 2 new clients in 6 months just using LinkedIn. Have I understood that right? Well, Alan, that's just from that campaign. So I pick up clients on LinkedIn all the time. I probably get 4 or 5 inquiries a month from people that I could sell to through LinkedIn because of the way I post and the way I use the content. If you put that on top of, I don't win all those businesses, but those pieces of business, but that generates conversations. If I then add in my conference stuff, the stuff I do around referrals, I do a lot of these sorts of events. This morning I did a podcast for an agency. I run a regular round table with a colleague where I invite people to come and listen to us talk about business issues. So at the moment, I've got on my CRM system, I use a CRM system, which is a customer relationship management system. I've got 120 different live leads on my CRM at the moment that I'm working through. Now, of that 120, maybe 5 or 6 will actually convert into clients in the next 6 months. But that's 120 conversations and 120 different people that I am engaging with content. And just to reassure you, it's just me. I don't have anybody else in my business. This is just me running a lead gen machine through my business. And if I can do it, anybody can do. It's about whether you want to. I really love this stuff. I get motivated by it. I'm engaged in it. So it's a good thing for me to do for my own business. And honestly, it also helps me win clients because I can talk in this way to people, and agencies go, gosh, if you can do it for yourself and you can do it for other agencies, maybe you can do it for us too. So it's a really positive thing for me to do.
Paul, I feel yet another knowledge share coming on because several people are asking what CRM system you use.
Oh, so I use HubSpot. I did a knowledge share with the ICG about just over a year ago on CRMs with Mike Stevens. So I don't know if that recording is still available.
Should still be, yeah.
So go to the ICG website. You can fast forward me at twice the speed and therefore don't have to listen to nearly as much of this nonsense. Yeah, so but I use HubSpot. I use the free version of HubSpot. For my business, the free version of HubSpot is more than powerful enough and has got more than enough capability and facility for me to do what I want to do, which is essentially track my leads, send a monthly newsletter, and track my pipeline of conversations from, I'm having an initial conversation with this person through to, oh, look, they've just given me some money for commission. But yeah, no, it's good. Camila said, I've found that less responsive to DMs. Yes, I think, people have become less responsive on LinkedIn because of the fact that there's so much crap and nonsense and so many bad habits of people that they're using. My perspective on this, if you're good at this, you cut through. So amidst all the nonsense and all the terrible business development that people are doing on LinkedIn, if you're good at it, people go, oh, that's good, that's interesting, that's different, and they will engage. They absolutely will engage. But yeah, you're fighting against a stream of people doing really terrible things on LinkedIn. Right.
Has anybody got one last question?
Yes.
Point they'd like to raise? No? Okay, well, in which case, I'd like to say thank you very much for Paul for a really engaging and informative presentation, and we'll look forward to the LinkedIn one later in the year.
And look, thank you so much, guys. Please do send me a LinkedIn connection or email me or phone me or WhatsApp me. I'm very happy to continue these conversations. It's just thank you so much for your time and your attention. And I hope it's been a useful kind of 55 minutes of your lives.
I think it has, and everyone's thanking you on the chat. So thank you all.
Bless you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you so much, guys.
And,
have a great day.
okay.
Have a great time. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.